today. And so once we get Facebook going and we get the go ahead, then Danny, you are ready to start. We're good to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. 7:30 a.m. on April 12th. This is the Transportation Policy Board of the Thurston Regional Planning Council. I'm Danny Madrone. I'm chairing in Andy Ryder's absence. And we'll start with introductions. Mark, will you take us through those?
I will. And let's start with you.
I already did mine. Danny
Okay,
Madrone,
so City of Olympia, Danny Madrone. City of Tumwater.
Peter Agavi.
Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, all.
City of Rainier.
Good morning, everybody. Ron Kemp, City of Rainier.
And City of Tenino.
Good morning, one and all. John O'Callahan representing the great city of Tenino.
And let's go to Intercity Transit.
John Melnick, authority member. Morning, all.
And our business representative, McKeegan Jensen.
Hi, Jessica here.
And our business representative, Wasson.
Dave Wasson, Dancing Goats Coffee, representative for business.
Our emeritus representative.
You're muted, Pete.
Who was here?
My help if I unmute. Hi, this is Pete Komet.
And our community representative, Murray.
I'm Michelle Murray, thank you.
And community rep Millar.
Howdy, Travis Millar, community rep.
And our WashDOT representative.
Gaius Tanoy, WashDOT Olympic Region.
Okay, I am scanning to see if I missed anyone. I don't believe that I did. Katrina Van Every will introduce staff. Thanks, Katrina.
Good morning. From Intercity Transit, we have Emily Bergkamp and Rob LaFontaine. From Thurston County, Matt Unzelman. From the City of Lacey, Martin Hoppy. From the City of Olympia, Sophie Stimson and Michelle Swanson. And from the City of Tumwater, Mary Heather Ames. TRPC staff, in addition to Mark and myself, we have Paul Brewster, Dorinda Merrill, Berlina Lucas, Dave Reed, Karen Parker, Sarah Porter, Theresa Julius, and Crosby Carter.
All right, that's everyone there. So sorry, I forgot I was leading this meeting for a second. So we need an agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as published, please?
So moved, John O'Callahan.
Melnick, second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Excellent. So next we have our consent calendar, which is just approving our meeting minutes from March 8th. Could I get a motion to do that, please?
So moved, John O'Callahan.
Second, Don Melnick.
Second, Jessica Jensen.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Did we have anybody who signed up for public comment?
We did not, Chair.
Okay, well then we will move right along to the RTIP, the Regional Transportation Improvement Program amendment with Sarah Porter.
I apologize. Were you going to do the executive director's report?
Oh, shoot. Sorry, Mark.
I do have just a couple of things.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Sure.
The executive director's report.
Yeah. So I just wanted to let the policy board know we've been working hard to make sure we hit our obligation target this year. City of Olympia ran into some really extraordinary circumstances around right of way for Phones Road. And so we've been looking to move that project to 2024, and some other partners have been able to move their projects forward so that we can hit our obligation target by the September 30th deadline. And so at Friday's council meeting, the council took action to amend the letter to Intercity Transit to move up the East Martin Way Gateway project so that it can get started this year in fiscal year 2023. And also the county is moving up one of their projects, Sergeant Road and Old Highway 99. So the great news is we're going to continue to meet our obligation target by the September 30th deadline. The only not as good news is it's looking like we won't hit the June 30th date, which is when we obligate by June 30th, that's what makes us eligible for redistributed funds when others can't use all of their funding and can't get it obligated. And so we likely will not be eligible for redistributed funds this year, but we won't be sanctioned or anything like that. We're going to get it done by the September deadline. And these things happen, especially with right-of-way. Sometimes just unexpected things come up, and it can be challenging to get through that stage in particular. And then the other thing I'd just like to mention is we are getting started on updating the bike map. So making some, as we're finishing up the trails plan, they're also making sure that we've got the bike map up to date with any changes on it. And so that's something we'll be working on over the next year. And thanks, Chair.
Okay. And with that, thank you, Mark. Now we'll move on to the RTIP amendment with Sarah Porter.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. Good morning. My name is Sarah Porter, and I am an assistant planner here at TRPC. This agenda item is to review two proposed amendments to the 2023-2026 Regional Transportation Improvement Program, the RTIP. And as a reminder, the RTIP is a 4-year list of near-term transportation projects, which is updated annually. In between the updates, when new projects are added or substantial changes are made, they go through this amendment process. So today, we are talking about the City of Lacey and the City of Tumwater, which has requested amendments to the 2023-2026 RTIP to include the following projects. City of Lacey has the Lacey Safety Action Plan, and the City of Tumwater has the Percival Creek Fish Passage Barrier Removal. Sorry, that one's hard to say. Both cities secured federal funding for these projects. So in order for these funds to be released, the projects must be amended into the RTIP and then forwarded to the State Transportation Improvement Plan. Public comment was solicited on TRP's website and no public comments were received. If there are any questions, we have staff available from both of the cities. And that's all I have.
All right.
Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, I was just wondering if we could get just like a 30-second overview of what each of these projects is.
Sure. Mary Heather, would
Oh,
you?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That was included in your packet. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Thank you. I just missed it. That's all.
Sure, not a problem.
All right. Anything else?
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, move approval.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
All right. We're just moving right along this morning. Up next, we have the Federal Transportation Performance Measures with Katrina Van Every. So go right ahead, Katrina.
Let me get my screen ready to share. Okay, so this is an action item today. We are requesting that you make a recommendation for council's consideration. And this is just regarding federal transportation performance measures. So as a refresher, we track 8 different performance measures. For safety, safety performance measures were adopted in 2017. That's Target 0. And each year we reaffirm with WashDOT that the Thurston region will continue to measure progress towards achieving the safety performance target using data on fatalities and serious injuries for both motorists and non-motorists. So generally speaking, pedestrians and bicyclists. We have transit performance measures, so transit asset management. So this is all about the buses and van pool vans and the equipment that IT uses to get people around. And so we annually adopt those as IT updates them. Same thing with transit safety performance measures. So this is how safe is it for the transit system? So are there injuries that occur on the job? Are there accidents that occur that impact either people who work for intercity transit or people who are using their assets? So the buses and van pool vans. So that is something that was one of the amendments that we just had for the regional transportation plan, was adding those in. And that is another performance measure that will be updated on an annual basis. So you'll see an update to that coming fairly soon. So what we're talking about really is the statewide targets. And there's 5 of them, and the CMAQ, or the congestion mitigation ones, no longer apply to TRPC because TRPC is in compliance with federal clean air standards and is no longer in a maintenance area. The CMAQ performance measures no longer apply to us. So really what we're talking about is pavement, bridge, highway system, and freight. And as I mentioned, all of these are statewide targets. So working with metropolitan planning organizations like Thurston Regional Planning Council, WashDOT established performance measures and targets for pavement condition, bridge condition, system performance or congestion, and freight movement in 2018. At that time, TRPC elected to support WashDOT measures rather than adopting our own. And each of these targets is therefore measured at the state level, not at the local level. On December 16th of last year, WashDOT adopted updated performance measures and targets. And that sets the clock for us so that by June 14th, council needs to either support the WashDOT measures or adopt its own measures. Supporting the WashDOT measures includes agreeing to plan and program projects so that they contribute towards the accomplishment of the relevant WashDOT target. These performance measures include both 2- and 4-year targets. And as I understand it, only the 4-year targets apply to our region. That said, this may change when we officially become a transportation management area. So I'm just going to kind of take you through these 4 performance measures areas and look at, what was our performance in 2017, what was our performance in 2021, and what is WashDOT's target for the relevant performance measure. So first up is pavement. There are 4 measures relating to pavement condition. They include pavement condition on the interstate as well as the non-interstate portions of the national highway system. And you see that map highlighted here. And they're looking for the percent in good condition as well as the percent in poor condition. So what you see here is what those pavement ratings are. In 2017, in 2017, interstate pavement was fairly good. 32.5% of it was in good condition. They seem to have really upped the ante and gotten that to about 46% statewide. And so their 4-year target is actually 30%. Now, what you'll see is that 2021 saw an improvement over 2017 in most of these measures, but the 4-year target indicates pavement conditions are anticipated to deteriorate, and that is because there's a maintenance backlog. So the target is quite a bit lower than the performance now. And again, that is because they're anticipating not being able to get to all of the areas that need to be taken care of before that pavement deteriorates. If you're wondering what Thurston County, how our interstate and non-interstate NHS system is doing, the system here is in quite a bit better condition. So pavement in good condition on the interstate is about 63%. Pavement in poor condition is 0.6%, so quite a bit lower than the statewide average. Percent of non-interstate pavement in good condition on the NHS. So everything that is not the I-5 is at 31.8%. So quite a bit, again, quite a bit higher than what you see performance in 2017 and 2021 statewide. And then that percent in poor condition is about 2.2%. So again, quite a bit better than what we're seeing both in 2017 and 2021 statewide. So the next measure is bridges, and there are two measures relating to bridge condition. Again, the percent of bridges in poor condition and the percent of bridges in good condition. There are 62 bridges on the national highway system in Thurston County, and only 3 bridges are not on the interstate or only 3 are locally owned bridges. And both of those all of those are in fair or good condition. So 2021 again saw a small increase in bridges classified in poor condition. And the 4-year target reflects, again, a maintenance backlog similar to what we saw for pavement. I want to note that a bridge in poor condition does not mean the bridge is unsafe for travelers or in danger of collapse, but it does indicate there are advanced deficiencies that need to be addressed. Next up is highway system performance. And this is a reliability measure. So how long does it take to get through a corridor? So what's the travel time on the national highway system? The highway system performance measures indicate that reliability again, and 2021 saw improvements in congestion on the interstate system and other parts of the national highway system. However, the 4-year target indicates increased congestion between 2021 and 2025 is anticipated. So that improvement that we see between 2017 and 2021 probably is impacted by the changing travel patterns that we saw during the pandemic. And as we come out of that, and as our region continues to grow, or our state continues to grow, again, we're expecting additional congestion above what we saw even in 2017. And finally, we have freight, which is another reliability measure. So how long does it take for freight to move on the interstate? Is it reliable? And so similar to the highway system performance measure, it is based on truck travel time reliability, but it only applies to the interstate. And an index of 1.5 or lower indicates travel times are reliable. So when you look at this map for I-5, everything in the dark green and the light green indicates that we're meeting that benchmark of 1.5 or lower, meaning travel times are good. Everything in yellow, red, and orange indicates that you're creeping up above that travel time reliability measure. And so again, what you're seeing is that WashDOT is expecting that travel times statewide on the interstate system are going to see less reliability, so increased congestion on the interstate system. So staff's recommendation or suggests supporting the WashDOT measures as we already plan and program projects that support the various performance measures we just went over. We also recommend continuing to support these measures as they are periodically updated. And so this can be done in the same manner as the safety targets, sending WashDOT a letter reaffirming TRPC's agreement to plan and program projects so that they contribute to accomplishing the relevant WashDOT targets. So we're kind of halfway through this process right now. Last week we had tax review of the performance measures as well as council's first review. Today, we're at TPB, and again, this is an action item requesting a recommendation for council. This will go back to council in May, and then in October, we'll look at integrating these updated performance measures in the RTIP. Excuse me, and in July of 2025, as part of our update, our big update of the regional transportation plan, we will integrate these updates into that plan as well. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I see you, Don. Go ahead.
What did TAC have to say about their review? They're sort of the nuts and bolts end of this situation. I wondered if they concurred with the analysis you shared.
They did not make a recommendation one way or the other. They wanted to make sure that the information was accurate. So what you see being presented to you is a little bit different. I had a couple snafus with their presentation, but we did provide them with the updated presentation given to council. But generally speaking, there weren't any concerns voiced.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Pete.
I guess it's more of a comment than a question, and that is when you look at the map of which streets are covered, and I know I brought this up before, but it really makes no sense compared to what now are arterials. This map was developed probably decades ago, from what I can tell. Yelm Highway is in it, but when it turns into Cleveland and connects to Capitol Boulevard, it's no longer in it. 6th Avenue, it looks like about 2/3 of 6th Avenue and Lacey is in it. I mean, it just makes no sense. It seems like that needs to be cleaned up at some point in the process here. I don't know how involved that is, but at a minimum, it seems like those two streets should be cleaned up.
Can I ask for clarity? Are you referring to what constitutes part of the national highway system?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Do we get much say in there?
Not aware of.
I can speak to that. I can answer that. So the cities and the county can request amendments to the national highway system, but to do so, their routes must be classified as a principal arterial. So if that route isn't classified as a principal arterial, that amendment must go through, but it can be done concurrently with a national highway system request.
Thank you, Paul.
So are there any roads that would qualify for that kind of a request that aren't included on the map already?
Probably there would be, and I'm thinking specifically around Marvin Road with the growth of all the warehousing and industrial sites there. There are some other areas I think that would also qualify. I would also defer to staff at the jurisdictions because they're very familiar with their roads and what they're classified as.
I think that's what you, Pete, were suggesting, wasn't it? Changing in the classification of those streets you mentioned?
Is that directed at me?
Yeah, this is Don.
Yeah, it seems like those missing segments need to be at least connected. I mean, it's the same traffic. I don't understand how 2/3 of 6th Avenue can be a national highway system and the other third not. And the traffic on Yelm looks like, well, maybe I could understand where it stops at Henderson, so maybe that's why, but it just looks very weird. Is all I could say. So
go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say that one solution may be that at a future TAC meeting, we talk to jurisdiction staff about designated principal arterials that aren't captured on this map, so that we could get a sense of how much designated principal arterial not currently on the system are we talking about. But Paul's probably going to correct me and say that that's a bad idea.
No, not at all. what I wanted to share, there will be an opportunity. So because what we're still waiting on from the 2020 census result products from Federal Highway Administration is an update of our federal urbanized area boundaries for transportation planning. When those boundaries are adjusted, it could potentially change what was a rural route to become an urban area route. And so through that process, we do a round of federal functional classification amendments to all of our federally classified routes. So that would be a good time to review national highway system routes. And in fact, the City of Olympia is actually presently evaluating options for converting portions of Black Lake Boulevard Division, Cooper Point Road to NHS routes. And so we met with WashDOT to look at what the implications are on the reporting requirements of that, because there would be additional reporting requirements that would fall on local agencies with updating to an NHS route classification. So that is done with due diligence. So that's something we'll probably be looking at later this year when those urbanized area boundaries come out.
Pete, does that satisfy your concern there?
Yeah, yeah, you know, and I don't know the implications of these changes, so that's good that staff are looking at that. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the discussion.
Yeah, are there any other questions on this? It looks like we do need a motion. Hopefully
Staff
move to approve.
recommendations.
What's that?
Move approval of staff recommendations.
Thank you, John.
This is
And-
John second.
Okay.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Michelle, I saw your hand go up. Was that a vote? Okay. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, excellent. Look at us, we're making such good time this morning. All right, now we are at the state fiscal year 2024 Unified Planning Work Program, again with Katrina. So Katrina, go right ahead. This is just a presentation here.
Actually, you're going to get me on this one. No, it says Katrina on your. We're doing we're helping each other out this morning. So I'm going to take the Unified Planning Work Program presentation. So just give me a second here, and I will share my screen. Okay. All right. Okay, so Unified Planning Work Program. We talk about this each year. Each year, Council adopts the UPWP. This is one of those acronyms you hear the most in our meetings, because this is the work program that we follow as staff in terms of what is it that we're doing with the transportation funds that we receive from the federal government through Washington State Department of Transportation. And so this UPWP that we do each year needs to meet certain state and federal requirements. And so overall, what it does is it describes how we and what we are doing in conducting our regional transportation work. So this is everything from things like we just talked about in terms of performance measures, establishing and tracking our progress towards those performance measures, our transportation modeling work, GIS, the Regional Transportation Improvement Program, all those things that come to you on a frequent basis that relate to transportation. They're part of that core work program that we produce each year for Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, and Washington State Department of Transportation. And we've already had our meeting with those three entities to go over this draft UPWP and received their comments on it. Pretty minor. We're good to go. So it must meet federal and state requirements. We're doing well on that. And as you all know, this funding covers roughly about 40% of our total budget. So this is a major part of TRPC's overall work program and who we are and what we do. So what it includes is, again, the transportation component of our work program. It also talks about any specific projects that we're doing with surface transportation block grant funds that the Transportation Policy Board and Council program out. So those funds that go out to do local work. Sometimes we as TRPC also put in for those to get unfunded needs of the policy board and council completed. And so some of the current work we have that has been funded in that way is the rural communities strategy to better link up our rural communities to the north. Is part of that, and also the first phase of the high capacity transportation funds was funded with surface transportation block grant. And I'm going to use that one as a quick example because it is a great example how when we put some money to things at our local and regional level, it can help us leverage more state and federal funds. Because if you all remember, we put, if I remember right, I think it was 200,000 for the first phase of the high capacity transportation funds. And that helped us get 250,000 in state funds to go even further on that high capacity transportation work. So we more than doubled our local funds with state funds. And that's just kind of the power of making those local and regional investments to leverage more funding. The UPWP also covers some of the planning work of other agencies, like it talks about Intercity Transit's implementation of their strategic plan. It has language in there about what WashDOT is doing, both in the Olympic region and some of the headquarters work. So also includes not just what we're doing, but how does transportation is a system. So how is that system working together in some of the planning work that others are doing? And then, as I mentioned, it covers our unfunded needs. We always have a fairly good list of things that we would like to do as a region if we had more funding. And the UPWP is one of the ways that we document those. And this year in particular, we've talked a lot about the federal funding opportunities with the bipartisan infrastructure law and with the Inflation Reduction Act. We're putting some staff time towards trying to line up work for TRPC and for our partners over the next 5 years while we've got those funding opportunities. So we're going to be putting some special effort into grant research and applications for this year to look to line us up with work well into the future. So part of the UPWP talks about major initiatives that we have going on right now, and you'll be seeing and hearing about this. Well, actually, really all of these you'll be hearing and seeing about in the coming year, because these are things we're working on. We're working on a website for resources for electric and alternative fuel planning. So how can we help this region get ready for a more electrified and alternative fuels like hydrogen? How can we prepare our region for those? Our population and employment forecast. This is very important for both our transportation planning and our land use planning and environmental planning for that matter, in terms of how much do we plan to grow, where is that growth likely to occur, and similarly, where are our jobs and where are our jobs likely to occur in the future. We update this every 4 or so years, and we're working on an update of the population and employment forecast this year. As you've heard about before, because this ties back to the household travel survey that we've been talking about for a couple of years, we are right in the midst of a major update to our travel demand model. And this is our main planning model that we're updating for the 2025 update of our regional transportation plan. So our regional transportation plan needs to be updated now every 5 years. Our last update was July of 2020, and so we're targeting roughly July of 2025 to complete the next regional transportation plan update. Regional Trails Plan, you've heard about that at recent meetings, and you'll keep hearing about that until it's done. We are getting close to having that Regional Trails Plan complete. And I already talked about the update of the Regional Transportation Plan that will start in the latter part of this year and run through July of 2025. And then this is a big one that we've talked about for a long time. The TMA, that is the new acronym or newer that you're going to be hearing a lot. That is Transportation Management Area. And what the significance of that is when we became in the 2020 census, and we've also talked about this quite a bit, but we have a lot of new members. In the 2020 census, there was a big question is the Tumwater, Lacey, Olympia metropolitan area, the urban area, going to grow, exceed 200,000 in population? And the answer ended up being yes. We're about 209,000, if I remember correctly. And so we are now going to be designated as a transportation management area. And that is a designation by the federal government under what makes us a metropolitan planning organization. And what it basically the implications of that are now we go from being considered kind of a smaller area to a large urban area. And so we've got some increased responsibilities around things like integrating multimodal, particularly transit, into our work. We're in good shape with that. Just so folks know, there are many MPOs around the nation that don't have transit as part of their board and don't actively work with their transit agencies. We do, and we thank Intercity Transit for how much they've been involved in our work and will continue to be so, because now there are more requirements. But what we've heard is that we're going to be in good shape there because of the relationships we already have and how we already do business. But anyway, a lot more to come on transportation management area. That's something we're going to be working really closely with WSDOT, Federal Highways and Federal Transit and Intercity Transit over the next year plus to make that transition. It will come with a little bit more planning funds, but it's mostly a little bit more responsibility just in terms of our planning needing to meet certain requirements. And then the other big part of this is every 4 years, your TMA, your MPO, needs to be certified by Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration as being compliant with the rules around how we do our planning. Again, we're not too worried about those things because we have a robust planning program. We have a robust transportation policy board and council, but we've got to get our arms wrapped around just what are these new things? What do they mean? How do we get them done? When do we get them done? And there's a lot for us to learn there. And honestly, there's a lot for some of our local federal contacts to learn on that because none of them have been through one of these transitions either. And so we'll be learning together. Okay. So this is just a little more detail on that becoming a TMA. As I mentioned, comes with more expectations for planning with transit agencies. We'll need to develop a congestion management process. And this is our understanding is this is the first thing that will be due from us 18 months after we're officially designated a transportation management area. As I mentioned, we'll be certified every 4 years as meeting the requirements of both Federal Transit and Federal Highway Administration. And there's some changes to the way funding is distributed. There are some more funds that will come directly to intercity transit. And then, and this we don't fully know the details of now, all of our funding won't necessarily come through WashDOT as it does now. And I'm talking about TRPC. Some of it will come as direct agreements with either FTA or Federal Highway Administration, but we don't have all the details on that either. The other really good piece of news on this is one of the things that they'll be looking at in the certification is how do we distribute the federal funds that we program. And one of the things they'll be looking at is that process, and is that process criteria supported. And with our last call for projects, we got through our first return to more of a criteria supported approach. So we'll also be in good shape there. That was something we really needed to transition to, and we successfully did so in the last call for projects. So thanks to everybody for helping us do that, because that is going to help us out a lot now that we're a transportation management area. In terms of unfunded needs, so these are some of the things that we list in the UPWP that are work that we would like to do if we can find the funding. And like I said, we're going to be actively looking for grant funding to do some of these over the next handful of years, I should say. First is high capacity transportation. We've got a total at this point of $450,000. It's kind of a question mark. Will there be a phase 3 that comes out of this work as we work through the current 250,000 that we were allocated by the state? Are there then next steps that we need to take in this process? So that's kind of a placeholder for that. Regional freight strategy, that is something we've been trying to get funded for several years now. I submitted a RAISE grant. I can't remember. RAISE is an acronym that I can't remember, but it's a infrastructure grant to get this funded at $988,000. We should hear back about that in June. So hopefully we get that funded this time. If not, this is one of our highest priority pieces to get done, because again, as we transition to a transportation management area, our planning for freight will be one of the areas that they will want to see bolstered. And so we need to, we need to get that work funded. Regional multimodal level of service. This is something we've had on our unfunded needs for a while, looking at coming up with level of service for more than just cars on roads, looking at what's the level of service we're trying to provide for bicycles, for pedestrians, for transit. And that is something that the state and feds are moving more towards, but admittedly it's been slow on their end too, which is one of the reasons it's been sitting on our unfunded needs for a while. Transportation resiliency strategy. This is around as we see things like increased flood frequency, increased flood severity, sea level rise. What are the risks to our transportation system based on some of those changes, and what are things that we can do to make our system more resilient to those potential kinds of events? Countywide bicycle and micro mobility strategy. This is something that's kind of come out of the trails plan to some extent, and which is we've got our regional trail network. We have bike lanes, pedestrian facilities, but we haven't really dealt with yet all the kind of new battery operated parts of that transportation system. And so this is really to help us get our arms around all the emerging active transportation options out there, e-bikes, electric skateboards, and things that we hadn't necessarily anticipated 20 years ago, that now are becoming more and more a part of our overall transportation system. And so how do we deal with those things going forward? And lastly is neighborhood centers study. This is something more for the urban areas where we through Sustainable Thurston and through local comp plans and such, we have neighborhood centers designated. And this is really about how can we work the economy, the transportation system, the land use rules and options to really help those designated neighborhood centers develop in that way. And so these are kind of like corridor studies, but more for a node than a corridor. And that those are some that we would like to get started on that type of work. And so again, those are things that are identified in the Unified Planning Work Program that we're going to be looking to get grant funds to implement. But as you dig into that document, it's got everything that we're currently doing and everything that we're planning on doing and everything we'd like to be doing around transportation over the next year plus. Not looking for an action today. This is a briefing. Council will heard about the UPWP at their last meeting, and they'll adopt at their meeting coming up in May, but this doesn't require a recommendation. So with that, Chair, I'll take any questions.
All right, Don, I see your
I-
hand. Go right ahead.
Since you mentioned the high capacity transportation study, I presume sometime in the near future, you'll be telling us how far you've come and where you aspire, a little more specifically than you covered just now.
We absolutely will. We are currently, in fact, we've got them on the calendar to meet with the contractor, kind of rescoping a little bit because the 250,000 was a pleasant surprise to some extent. And so now let's make sure we know what we're going to do now that we have more resources than we originally had when we started looking to do this work. And so the short answer is absolutely done. You'll be hearing more about this, a lot more about this, and soon. We've got a little bit of work to do to kind of get a new path charted for how we're going to do this work, and then we'll bring it back to you.
Thank you.
Jessica.
Do we have any idea of the number of alternative bicycle type of vehicles? I live near Black Lake Boulevard and I travel the county end of Black Lake Boulevard every day. And I'm seeing more and more skateboards and other types of bicycle alternatives. And yeah, do we have any idea of numbers?
I don't believe that we do. There are counts that are made on our trail system. We also have purchased some quote big data that uses people's cell phones to help us tell us about pedestrian and bicycle use. But I do not believe any of that can differentiate between battery supported and traditional forms. Paul, do you know of anything that can do that?
We don't have any local data. There are studies that talk about like national averages of ownership of these devices, but nothing that we can use locally, not yet.
I assume that they can use bike trails safely, just like bicyclists and pedestrians. Is that fair to say?
Hold on to that. We're going to talk about that here at the next presentation. So
I'll
try to answer that in the next one. Yep.
Thank you.
Jessica, you seeing those single wheel skateboards out in your neck of the woods?
Oh yeah. Yeah. You know, a lot of them actually.
Yeah.
I have a neighbor who goes down one of our trail systems, Garen Park, with his as far as he can go. So anyway.
John, go ahead, John.
Oh, John, you're muted.
There we go. A lot of the questions can be answered by looking at other jurisdictions. For example, the first time I saw an electric bike was about 15 years ago, and Virginia Beach was going through the same questions that were being asked right here. Where can they go? What speeds are they allowed to do? All of that kind of stuff. Virginia Beach went through about 3-4 years to come up with their rules and regulations. So instead of having to reinvent the quote unquote wheel, you might want to just give them a call to see if we can use anything that they've done. Virginia Beach, if you've ever been there, they've got something like a 10-mile boardwalk right now that's goes up and down the Atlantic coast. Never mind all the other stuff, because it's a major tourist area. So it might be worth giving them a call and seeing what they have.
Thank you for that, because we absolutely will. City of Seattle's done a lot of work on this, so it will be our intention to look first at what others have done on this subject, because we know we're not breaking new ground. Even though these are emerging technologies, we won't be the first one to try and figure out how to make them work in the overall system.
Yeah,
so thank you.
I'm not so sure that they're emerging. It's just that the prices are coming down to
Good
so
point.
that they're more affordable.
That's a good point.
Yeah, my e-bike I got for $1,400, and I can go 42 miles with it at 28 miles an hour.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Mark? I'll just flag, Mark, that Olympia is already, maybe you're aware of this, but in terms of a neighborhood center study, we've been doing that in the city of Olympia. It's taken a bit of time. It's taken so long that the staff working on it retired. So it's just got a little bit more work to get over the finish line. But we already have done some of that work in-house. So that might not cost as much as you think it's going to if you didn't think of that in terms of putting together a number.
Thank you. And we are aware of that work, and that was kind of some of the genesis for taking a look at this regionally. And so we will certainly make sure that before we would go out for any sort of grant application, that we make sure we're smart about where Olympia already is on this, where all the jurisdictions might already be on this, before we put together a proposal.
And it could make us more competitive for a grant.
Absolutely.
Some of the work already done. Turns out you need to do a lot more than designate a neighborhood center to get one to be created.
As humans, we need a little nudge sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of nudges. Any other questions for Mark on this item? Well, that's great. That leaves us more time to talk about the Thurston Regional Trails draft plan. I was worried we wouldn't have enough time to talk with all the discussion that might come out of this. So we've got some more time. So Paul, go right ahead.
Yeah, good morning, policy board members. I'm excited to present to you one set of our regional trails plan draft recommendations. I'll say that the set I'm not presenting to you is perhaps the set of recommendations that most community members will be excited about, and that's knowing where the trail projects are, where they can go to ride their bikes or walk their dogs where they haven't gone before, and we're still working on that. But this morning, what I'm presenting to you is the policy connected recommendations. These are recommendations that will largely be implemented by the county, the cities, the state, those agencies that I'll call the trail managing agencies that actually have responsibility for the construction, operations, and maintenance of these facilities. And of course, TRPC has some involvement in regional trails network as well. So when I talk about the regional trails network, this is really the sum of the parts of all the jurisdictions' contributions to making that network possible. So this is an important policy document for TRPC. We're not required to do a regional trails plan, but as Mark mentioned, this is a UPWP funded project. It's important because it captures a point in time, our existing conditions, and captures all of the recommendations and projects that can assist the cities and the county as well as you and the council in being able to prioritize projects for funding as funding opportunities emerge. So with that, let's just kind of jump into it. So these recommendations are linked to the plan's goals. There's 5 goals. Katrina presented these to you in December. Just a quick highlight of the 5 goals. First is a connected and accessible network. So this is how we expand our existing network within Thurston County and perhaps beyond to neighboring counties. This is how we make our trails more accessible to neighborhoods through additional pathways, connecting our trails to parks and other important community destinations, as well as to transit, which is really key for some people to get around our community. User-friendly network really speaks to people being able to find information about the trails. Where are the trailheads? What's the availability of parking? Where do the trails connect to? Where can I go? What can I do? Once I'm on the trail, is there information that can help me navigate? Third, a safe and secure experience is really talking about for those who use, operate, and maintain the trail, will people feel safe on the trail? Do they know who to contact if an emergency situation comes up? So how can we design and operate our trails so that people can go out feeling confident that their experience will be safe? Fourth, a collaborative effort. This speaks to what I said earlier about it's the sum of its parts, it's the partnerships. How do we work together to make our system work more cohesively so that it feels seamless to the trail users as they're stepping out of Olympia into Lacey? We want to make sure that that trail network is functioning well and that partners are communicating and talking to each other to make that happen. And lastly, a well-maintained network. How can we maintain our existing investments as cost effectively as possible? So what I'm going to present to you is about a dozen recommendations out of the 34 that we have drafted, just to highlight those. But before I do, I just want to touch on, there are some details that pertain to each of these recommendations. In addition to identifying who the leads are that would be responsible for implementing these recommendations, we've also identifying partners. But importantly, I think you want to know, what is the timing and the cost of these? So we've come up with some descriptions that are really thresholds. So near term would be projects that we would expect to see implemented hopefully before we do the next Trails Plan update 5 years from now. Long term would be everything beyond 5 years. So that could be 6 to 20 years out. There is some uncertainty as to when some of these projects might be going, but as we update the plan and collaborate, we'll continue to refine and learn more and document those changes. And then of course, ongoing things that require regular activity, monitoring, and evaluation. That would be everything from maintaining websites to providing information to things like maintenance and operations. Cost estimates, low is projects less than $100,000. So that would be projects or activities or programs. Medium would be $100,000 to $500,000, and high would be those projects or programs that are larger capital projects. Would be construction of new trail projects, construction of a bridge, maybe a culvert replacement, a new restroom. Those would be high would be projects that are $500,000 or more. So on this first set, connected and accessible network, there's a total of 6 recommendations. The one that I want to present to you is really saying to the jurisdictions to commit to prioritizing and constructing the planned trails that are in the Thurston Regional Trails Plan. When I talk about the planned trails, this is that set of project recommendations. These are projects where some level of effort has been done, either a feasibility study has been completed, a city or the county or the state actually owns the right-of-way and has done some planning for this. So these are projects that are really queued up and ready for next phases of engineering and design or construction. Second is conducting studies to evaluate the feasibility and cost estimates for conceptual and proposed trails. and prioritizing studies that will connect trails to areas that in our community that have barriers to transportation. So for example, in 2018, we completed a feasibility study to extend Thurston County's Yelm Rainier Tenino Trail south to the town of Bucota. We also, at the same time, evaluated extending that trail out west to Tenino's city limits, Tenino's west city limits. And in fact, TRPC awarded funding to do the preliminary engineering and design phase of the Tenino project as part of your 2022 call for projects. So prior to the study being done, that was just a proposed trail corridor, but by actually completing that study, it positions that project, now that you have a sense of it's feasible, a general sense of its cost estimates, you can start making investments in the next steps to move those projects closer to reality. So that's why this second is important. Let's look at how we can continue connecting the system, and doing those feasibility studies is an important step for us to achieve those. User-friendly network, the two here first is plan for and widely publicized notices on pending trail maintenance and construction activity closures, identify safety to routes whenever possible to minimize disruptions to trail users. This recommendation was brought to the front a year ago when Thurston County was doing work on the Chehalis Western Trail for Latigo Street culvert replacement at Sturgeon Creek, and it caused a disruption to the trail. People were unaware that the trail was going to be closed for an extended period. There wasn't a whole lot of information being put out. The technical advisory committee reviewed this, thought this would be important. Trail managers thought this would be important. So there's always more work to do to notify the public when these types of disruptions occur. So here we're just trying to memorialize it and keep it at our trail managers top of mind that this is important. Because if you're driving your car and suddenly your route to your office or your doctor is closed unbeknownst to you, that is frustrating. Same would apply to trail users. Second here, what would be important to promote our trail, both for economic development, but make Thurston County an inviting community for trail users, is to promote our network. But we really don't have an overall brand for our trail network. We have trails with names, but we're not really branding that trail network. So we're saying this could be a low to medium cost effort to work with the trail managing agencies and partners to come up with an overarching brand for Thurston County communities trails, so that we can put that on the bike map. We could do brochures, put information on a website. Organizations like Experience Olympia and beyond could help promote it. Speaking to a safe and secure network, there's a total of 7 recommendations. 3 of these, one of these is implementing low-cost street crossing safety improvements such as vegetation and parking control, signage, pavement markings, and roadway rumble strips. These could be low-cost things that trail managing agencies could do. We also have a recommendation for other systemic safety studies to be done at trail crossings, but this one has identified that we also need some low-cost efforts to make those crossings more safe. We were talking about electric assisted devices and whether they're permitted on the trail. So Jessica, this was a question you were asking about. We surveyed all of our trail managing partners. There's actually mixed responses in some jurisdictions permitting the use of electric powered wheeled devices such as scooters or e-bikes on their facilities. Some don't allow it, some do. And there's no posted rules on this. And so if you're a trail user riding your e-bike, let's say in Olympia where it's permitted, and then enter Karen Fraser Woodland Trail, Lacey, it's not permitted, you would not know that. Now, to be clear, none of our trail managers are out there writing tickets and citing people for using these devices on the trail, but these devices are here to stay. They're not going away, they're only going to grow in popularity. So the point of a recommendation to establish, adopt, and publish a regional joint rule for electric facilities would be good practice. It's moving our region into what other metropolitan areas are doing. The third recommendation here for establishing and adopting and publishing a regional joint rule for an advisory posted speed limit throughout the trail network could also help enhance safety. Because with the proliferation of electric devices on trails, which an inexperienced user can get up to speed very quickly with very little effort, says that, yeah, we perhaps should have some rules and some information to help people understand what is appropriate and safe riding behavior on the trails. So that's the point of this. There's a footnote to that third one where perhaps that could be first implemented on a pilot basis, like do a pilot effort with it, maybe try it out for 6 months to a year to see how it works and let trail managing agencies evaluate that and see if it should be implemented permanently. On this one, trail managing agencies and our TAC did express concern about their ability to enforce this. And so that is why it is worded as an advisory speed limit and not an actual fixed requirement. Collaborative effort, this is talking about our partnerships. So a new one that we've added, that this has been in discussion for quite some time, is establishing a regional trails planning work group to coordinate on regional trails plan implementation. So this work group would be kind of the equivalent of our existing technical advisory committee, but their expertise would be focused on our shared use trail network. So this would be a combination of local agency staff, both immersed in recreation and transportation, to help advise on technical matters relating to operation, design, construction, and implementation of the projects in the regional trails plan. And just an opportunity for them to form a peer network to exchange information and best practices as well. The second one is convening an annual trail planning meeting with a broad set of stakeholders to promote awareness and support for the region's trail network. This is really an opportunity for that planning work group, TRPC, Parks departments to come and establish a meeting agenda to really broaden public participation, to engage the community, increase their awareness about what is the future plans for trails? What is going on now? How can we create a culture of more courteous behaviors on the trail? So this could be a meeting done with guest speakers, a panel discussion. It could be a hybrid meeting, or if in person, it could be a poster session. But this would bring a broader set of stakeholders together to just kind of do a summit, an annual summit, maybe a 2-hour meeting to just help increase community awareness, and then do a synopsis of that meeting and post it on TRPC's website. Lastly, create inclusive processes with diverse stakeholder representation during all phases of planning, operations, and project selection to strive for a trail network that serves community members' needs regardless of their age, socioeconomic situation, or abilities. This is really just emphasizing the importance of having an inclusive and diverse process to ensure that our trail network is an equitable network that is serving all the needs of those who desire to use our trail system. Last set of recommendations on a well-maintained network. Perhaps for our trail managing agencies, this might be the most important one. But this first policy here is one that sort of was born out of the Transportation Policy Board. This is one that Pete Comet has frequently brought up, and that is, should we establish a set aside of our Transportation Alternatives Program funding or Surface Transportation Block Grant funding to preserve or do pavement maintenance on our region's trail network? At present, we really don't have a good idea of what the need is. So there's kind of a sister recommendation with this one, and that is for the trail managing agencies to assess their pavement condition and do a pavement rating and develop cost estimates for an asset management plan. Knowing that would then help us fulfill this top recommendation here of evaluating the effectiveness of some sort of federal funding set aside that TRPC could use to maintain our system. Second one, evaluating alternatives for the usability, maintenance, and alignment of I-5 bike trail from the Chehalis Western Trail to Boulevard Road to resolve chronic maintenance and safety deficiencies. I really should have a map up here to show you where this is, because I think the map would speak to this. But for any of you who have ever used the I-5 bicycle trail, where it parallels the Karen Fraser Woodland Trail within the city of Olympia, this route is covered with a lot of organic debris from fir needles and big leaf maple leaves that have accumulated, that have acquired quite a big layer of dust. So there's a nice moss garden out there on this stretch of the trail, but it does have a lot of root heaving that makes this a bumpy route. It's owned by WashDOT, but there's an interlocal agreement with Lacey and Olympia to actually do the trail surface maintenance. But there really hasn't been funding to maintain this. Might be a redundant route. We're saying with this recommendation, we should evaluate if this particular section should be maintained, and if so, we should actually maintain it. And if not, let's close it down and perhaps restore it back to a natural condition and make sure that it doesn't spur other problems in the future. And then lastly, update the Thurston Regional Trails Plan every 5 years. So if the council adopts the trails plan this year, we'd be looking at doing an update probably starting in late 2026, 2027 to update the trails plan and maintain that plan every 5 years. And we'd be working with that advisory work group to help inform that update, as well as coordinating with the policy board and the council. So that is the end of my presentation. I'll say that these policy connected recommendations were shared with our trail advisory work group. 17 members attended a 2-hour meeting on February 24th to provide us feedback. We broke out into small groups, had discussions on these policy connected recommendations. We took their input, updated these, sent out the revised version back out to the advisory work group, trail managers, and our technical advisory committee. We received no comments, very little comment really on the last round, except for a comment from Karen Mesmer, who really said, I'll wait and see what the public comment on this is. So these recommendations, along with the project recommendations, will be presented in the final draft plan that will be shared with public comment. But for today, staff is just looking for your discussion, and if you have any feedback of those 34 policy recommendations in your packet, we'd like to hear from you. So with that, I'll stop. Danny, I'll turn it over to you for any discussion and questions.
Yeah, and do you mind, oh, thank you, stopping your screen share. Jessica, I see your hands up.
Yeah, some clarification, please. First, does this include trails that are pedestrian only types of trails? It's not clear to me. That I assume so, but it's not clear, and that might be something you want to clarify in the presentation.
Yeah, great question. No, it doesn't include pedestrian only trails, like say a nature path through Priest Point Park or Watershed Park or something like that. These are shared use paths, which are typically 10 to 12 foot wide paved or crushed gravel surfaces that are multimodal. So they could be open to bicyclists, hikers, pedestrians, horseback riders in some areas.
Okay, and so then I think that answers my next question, which is it does not include our street trails, the bike paths that are along our streets and roads.
It would not include the on-street bicycle facilities and sidewalks, but those connections to trails are important. And so we do highlight those in our project recommendations areas.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, and up next, I see Don.
Well, first of all, you probably did it before, but thanks for acknowledging the relationship between trails and public transit. But the other thing, I guess my observation, based on what Jessica and I think others have raised, I believe there's going to be more and more and more of these electric vehicles of all types wanting to run on trails. And that you begin to touch on the topic of enforcement. And I realize that's a tacky subject, but these, like, by and large, these electric vehicles, acceleration is far greater than most humans can have, and they can travel at greater speeds. And I just believe at some point in time, enforcement is going to become an issue. And so I think adding to what John pointed out, you might want to check with other agencies and see what they're doing, because maybe there's other more urban agencies where enforcement has become an issue. Food for thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don.
All right, and Pete, I knew your hand was going to be up. What have you got?
Well, thank you, Danny. The one that there are a couple of minor wording things that I'll probably send to you, Paul, but the one that jumped out at me was recommendation 5.5, which you didn't cover, which is including full cycle costs for trails. From what I recall, we don't do that for other transportation projects. And I'm concerned that could become a barrier to getting the system expanded. You have a prior recommendation under 5.4 that I think is very important, which is we got to figure out how to maintain these trails through some kind of joint agency agreement. But I'm concerned about this life cycle having to require yet another barrier to getting trails built. So I would suggest 5.5 be removed.
We'll look at that one again, Pete, and see if we can. I think there are some other important factors in there, but yeah, full life cycle costs could potentially be a barrier, and we'll examine that one.
Thank you.
And Jessica, you got another
Yeah,
question?
I have more just a comment on Pete's comment. I think it's a really good point. At the same time, I see trails as being a higher safety concern than roads. And I realize that's probably not true, but for many of us that I think when you have some illusion of protection in your vehicle, especially if you have a newer vehicle with airbags and the like. But when you're out on a trail, on a bicycle or anything, wheelchair, whatever, you are much more vulnerable. And so I think that we might want to look at how do we, I don't necessarily, I hear the point, but I'd be concerned about taking maintenance out of there and then having an issue of potentially increased risks. And of course, that's a liability to the jurisdictions.
Yeah. Interesting. John, do you have a comment specifically on the 5.5 or is it on a different topic?
There was a casual mention of enforcement, implying that it was going to be voluntary. My only observation, Danny, was that I think there's going to be many, many more of these electric vehicles, scooters, bicycles and stuff that travel at a much greater pace. And you don't have to be in physical condition to use them necessarily. So I just think long-term enforcement of some sort is going to have to be an issue. That's why I was just suggesting checking with other agencies that may have faced that problem already.
Okay, I was asking John. He's got his hand up.
Sorry,
is it on? Yeah, I wanted to comment on this. Unless you've got something, John, on 5.5. You're muted too, so I can't hear you.
There you go. One of the things that Pete was bringing up was maintenance of the trails. This is not something new. We've talked about this quite some time ago, and then it kind of fell off to the wayside. And it's the same issue is of getting the autumn leaves off of the road because it gets slippery, that kind of stuff. And one other thing is Don was saying that these things that they go fast, and they go, the fastest that they'll go is about 28 miles an hour, unless you're going downhill, then you got that help. And they've been at 28 miles an hour from the very first time that I've seen one of these electric bikes. I don't think that and I don't know for sure that the skateboards, you know, the unicycles and that kind of stuff go much faster because it is just one wheel. But an electric bike will do 28 miles an hour. The only thing that's gotten better with them is how far you can go. Like I said, with mine, I can go 48 miles, maybe a little bit more. And that's without pedal assist. Thank you.
Thanks. So I just wanted to follow up on Pete's comments that I agree that full life cycle costs should not stop a trail from being constructed. And we don't have those same standards for roads. Like if a brand new road is going in, we're not saying, oh, that road, you need to identify sustainable maintenance funding. So we would never build any new roads if we had to have sustainable maintenance funding source. And so in terms of, equitable application of funding to different types of projects, we can't have different standards for different types of getting around. I think it's good to have an action around identifying a sustainable maintenance funding source, but tying that into a full life cycle cost of a project that could prevent one from being funded altogether is not an equitable approach to transportation planning or funding. So just wanted to note that. Any other comments either on this one or generally to these recommendations that are in front of us? Oh my gosh, y'all, we gotta finish early? Look at this. All right, well, thank you so much, Paul. This is important work. How we get around when we don't want to do it in our vehicles. So, all right, well, with that, we don't have anything else on our agenda today. Usually there's a good of the order point that we don't have time for, but is there anything anybody else would like to share related to transportation? Don, go ahead.
I was gonna, at the beginning, before the meeting started, I asked Mark about the status of the SHB 1791, the new airports bill. I think he and Karen, it is progressing through the legislature.
Yeah, so really quick, House Bill 1781 or 91?
I think it's 91, but I could be wrong.
Okay, 1791 is about disbanding the current Commercial Aviation Coordinating Commission and basically restarting a new planning process for airports in the state. And it started in the House, it passed out of the House, it's passed out of the Senate Transportation Committee and is now awaiting, it's in rules on second reading. Therefore, it's waiting to go to the floor for votes and amendments. So there's a decent chance that this one gets taken care of before the end of this session. And we'll keep you posted on what that means going forward in terms of the discussion on airports.
And Mark, do we know, one thing I learned last meeting was that with the current process in play, there wasn't actually any funding for them to do the work in a reasonable way. Is there funding attached to this bill that would actually help the process be a bit more, successful?
Yeah, there is. And yet, all that you don't know until the final gavel and the budget's final and all that, because sometimes even when they call for a certain amount of funding, as you all know, that doesn't necessarily mean that level of funding is actually going to be appropriated. And so we'll need to watch that part closely too.
All right, excellent. Any other questions on this or other good of the order topics? All right, we're all going to get a few minutes back this morning. Thanks for bearing with me. I'm realizing I'm still a bit jet lagged from getting back from a trip last weekend, but we made it through. And,
didn't show at all. Well chaired.
We did well.
I'll see y'all next month. Thank you so much. Adjourned.